guys are good. Just a little bit so I can see.
Yeah, why don't you guys slide over a little bit? Yeah, you guys switch ropes. Switch. There you go.
Sorry.
Does that work?
Then he'll get us in the film.
Well,
We want to see everybody.
yeah. No one's ever said that to us before. So I want to welcome members of the press who are here today, as well as our local colleagues in government. I am Senator Rob Ortt. I'm joined by Assemblyman Angelo Morinello, Assemblyman Mike Norris, Sheriff Mike Filicetti, as well as local elected officials from North Tonawanda and Lockport, all across Niagara County here. We're here to talk about an issue that I can certainly speak for my colleagues here. We have talked about ad nauseum. I know the sheriff has talked about it. In fact, we stood out front of this building maybe a year ago or so and talked about the cashless bail law. And a lot of folks might think, you know, here we go again, we're talking about bail. We know bail's a problem. The public knows bail's a disaster. They know bail has contributed to more victims, more crimes, repeat offenders, more recidivism. But it's helpful, I think, to be able to provide examples where they happen. And we have a absolutely unbelievable example of the failure of not only New York State's bail laws and New York State's criminal justice, but the federal government is also now turning a blind eye to people who break our laws in the United States of America. So I'm going to run through, and the sheriff's going to talk after me, and he can, if I have any facts wrong, but on February 1st, the North Tonawanda Police conducted a sting operation where they arrested two individuals who were attempting to scam a North Tonawanda woman out of $40,000. Not only did they attempt to defraud her, but they impersonated local law enforcement through electronic spoofing of phone numbers. So they called her from a phone number that appeared to come from the North Tonawanda Police Department. After they were arrested through questioning, it was determined that these individuals who reside in the Philadelphia area were not legal residents of the United States of America and were in the country illegally. These individuals were taken to the Batavia Federal Holding Center, where they were turned away due to the current federal administration's policies and taken back to Niagara County Jail. So they were turned away by the federal government, by ICE, because the Biden administration does not feel that someone who is here illegally, who's been arrested for a crime, is worth holding on to and deporting. That should make every American angry. It makes me angry. But that is what is happening across the country, not only here in Niagara County and in Western New York. These individuals would have been immediately released on ROR due to the current bail laws, because they were nonviolent offenses. The presiding judge was quick thinking and was able to hold them briefly on a federal detainer. But that detainer will only hold them until the paperwork was filed and completed. These individuals were fitted with ankle monitors, which of course can be removed or cut off. I don't say that like it's real easy, but I suspect it's easy enough. And they were released from Niagara County Jail once the paperwork was filed yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Sheriff.
That's correct.
So they are no longer here. No bail. They have ankle monitors set on them. They're here in the country illegally. They reside outside of Philadelphia. There's no one watching, there's no one listening that thinks these gentlemen are coming back to court. We will never see them again. The ankle monitors will be removed or cut off. And once they're out of the area, that'll be it. In fact, there's even a question about whether the ankle monitors work or it would be legally restraining once they go beyond Niagara County. So when New Yorkers say that they're frustrated with criminal justice reform, when they say, you know, we don't feel safe, when they say they don't think government listens to them, is out of touch, this is a great example. Two illegal aliens in the country. They've already broken a law. They try to scam a woman out of $40,000, which for all I know is her life savings. Due to the great work of our local police officers in North Tonawanda, they get arrested, and now they're released. So this woman has to wonder, how is justice ever going to be served? This is a joke. The Biden administration's policies are a joke. The New York State cashless bail laws are a joke. The point of bail, or the point of allowing judicial discretion, is to ensure their return to court. To assure their return to court to face justice. I have no belief that is going to happen in this situation. I am real tired of talking about bail reform, of talking about Democrats in Albany and now in Washington, D.C., who don't seem to think that unless you shoot somebody, or unless you rape somebody, or murder somebody, only then is it worth holding you. Otherwise, back to the streets. Not worth it. Unbelievable. I do want to thank the NT Police for their efforts, because even in spite of all this, they continue to try to do the best job they can to protect people, to protect their person and property. I want to thank Sheriff Filicetti and his officers and sheriff's deputies and the folks here at the jail for trying to hold on to these folks as long as we could. I want to thank the judge, who did everything he could under the law to ensure these folks might return to court, or that we could try to keep them where we can monitor them. But I have no thanks for President Biden and his administration. I have no thanks for Governor Hochul or her administration, or my colleagues across the aisle who have created the situation, who have enforced laws or put in policies, put in place policies that result in these two individuals being back on the street, and probably back in Philadelphia, and eventually God knows where. At this time, I want to call up a colleague of mine, someone who knows what it is to be a judge, someone who knows a little bit about keeping people safe and putting bad people behind bars where they belong, and that is my colleague, Assemblyman Angelo Morinello.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. I have 2 words to add this morning: judicial discretion. This is a principle that has been a hallmark of our judicial system and our criminal justice system since time immemorial. And what does it really mean? It really means that the individual who is in possession of an information, a complaint, a warrant, a record check, but only if they're over 18, because now, if you're under 18, there's no way to find out if you have a prior criminal record. But this is the individual sitting there who's looking at the defendant, who's reading the documents, yet does not have the ability to use the information and the knowledge to protect victims. And so, had that been more judicial discretion to the North Tonawanda judge, these individuals would have not had to be put through a charade that brought them to the holding center, and then had the federal government's rules release them, bring them back to the county, and put them out on the street. Now, if they're in this country illegally, what do you think an ankle monitor is going to do? We're going to go find an ankle monitor somewhere in the weeds, in a ditch somewhere, and maybe within earmark of this particular facility. They're here illegal. What makes you think that they're going to continue to keep the law? You got to remember, when they did all of this bail reform, not once was there discussion about just don't break the law. In this day and age, no one has to be responsible for consequences of their actions. What does that mean? It means we're raising citizens without any responsibility, without any fear, without any realization that there are laws. We are a country of laws, but they're being broken and they're being condoned. So what I tell everyone here is this: absolutely pay attention to what is happening. In the budget proposal, there was discussion on judicial discretion, yet senators and assembly members who do not believe in protecting a victim argued against it. They made stands that if the general public heard them, they would vote them out of office because they have no consideration. So we're going to go back to my original 2 words, judicial discretion. We have judges. If you have a bad judge, we have the Office of Judicial Conduct that will deal with it. But the general public, because those who are not happy with decisions should not be making the choices to take away protection from our citizens. Thank you very much. And now I introduce my colleague, Assemblyman Michael Norris.
Robert Norris.
My dad is Robert. So
I know.
Thank you,
I was
Judge.
thinking of his dad.
It's fortunate, very unfortunate that we have to be here today. And when you look at these cashless bail laws that were adopted by the downstate-driven majority and former Governor Cuomo, and continues to stay in effect with Governor Hochul, it is completely outrageous. Here, these individuals who are here illegally in our country harassed this victim, threatened her, went and got the $40,000, and then came to her house. Thankfully, the North Tonawanda Police Department, in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, were there to protect her. But I also want to mention, and I know the Sheriff will mention this too, but if you receive a telephone call and you are unsure about this, I want you to make sure you call law enforcement. They will be there to protect you. So if something is amiss, something does not feel right, do not hesitate. There are a tremendous amount of scamming out there, also with your emails. So I encourage you to do that. Now, back to the situation. Due to the laws that are on the books right now, the judge could not hold these individuals under the state law. This just shocks the conscience of any reasonable person. I've asked many people since this incident happened, do you think that those people should have been let out of jail? They're like, absolutely not. This victim, what could have happened to that victim if the police were not there? That's why we need judicial discretion restored back, so our elected judges are given the full authority to hold individuals, also to include the dangerous standard, because we're the only state in the nation that does not include a dangerous standard. So again, I want to thank law enforcement. I want to thank them for what they did to help these victims. And I also want to call upon the governor and the downstate-driven majorities to step up and to repeal these cashless bail laws. Thank you very much. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our sheriff, doing a great job for the people of Niagara County, Sheriff Mike Filicetti.
Thank you. First off, I want to thank the gentleman that I'm standing up here with. They have repeatedly called on this legislation, repeatedly asked for change in this legislation, and it's not happening. And in law enforcement, we deal with this on a regular basis where bail reform is affecting the public safety here, not just in Niagara County, but across the state. And it's an issue that needs to be addressed. It's an issue that law enforcement has never been invited to the table to have this discussion. You would think the very people that are supposed to be carrying out public safety in your communities would be part of the discussion when it comes to public safety and how it should be administered. And we've never been asked. We've never been even questioned about what we thought about public safety and what we thought about bail reform or less is more or raise the age or raise the lower age, discovery. We're not included in these discussions as we continue to weaken the criminal justice system here in New York State. I think the gentleman up here did a very good job of covering the current situation with the scammer. I too agree. I don't think they're going to show back up. And what did we accomplish? And I also agree that law enforcement continues to go out and do their job regardless of the circumstances that we have to do it under. I want to highlight a few other incidents here in Niagara County that should cause concern for everybody. We're talking about scammers today. I want to talk about a domestic violence incident. Before I get into the particulars of that, we're hearing from domestic violence victims that they're frustrated. They call, the suspect gets arrested and then released and puts them back in further danger. The only thing they leave often is with an order of protection in their hand, and I can tell you from past experience that is no guarantee for safety when you have an order of protection in your hand. A recent domestic violence incident right here in this county had the suspect released on his own recognizance after charges of criminal mischief, criminal tampering, and harassment. It was a physical domestic. The suspect could not be held after arraignment and was released with an order of protection. And that's not the judge's doing, that's under current bail reform. He could not be held. Later that same day, the suspect went back into the victim's residence and approached the victim, who was asleep on the couch with a knife in his hand. By mere luck, she was not injured, and the suspect was again arrested. This is where we were talking about judicial discretion. The judge should be able to say this individual is a public safety risk, they're a danger to the public, and have some mechanism to hold them here in our correctional facility or any correctional facility. Right now, they don't have the ability to consider public safety or danger to the public, or are they going to actually show up for court? As many of you may have seen, we've had a rise in stolen vehicles and stolen vehicle pursuits. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody when we don't hold people accountable. They're free to go out and do what they want. They'll come and steal your vehicle and know that they're most likely going to get an appearance ticket or get released. In recent months, my deputies pursued a stolen vehicle from the town of Wheatfield through the town of Niagara, city of Niagara Falls, and ending in Lewiston. This individual had been arrested 8 times in a matter of 2 months. But yet, here he is, out on the street endangering multiple police agencies and the public at large. When he was arrested for this vehicle pursuit, he had a pending warrant for the same conduct in another county. Again, not a big surprise. This current system of favoring release is helpful to the criminal and detrimental to our law-abiding citizens. Again, I'm asking for a seat at the table. Law enforcement is asking for a seat at the table so we can have sensible criminal justice reforms that focus on public safety first and not our criminals. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Again, I want to thank the Sheriff, my colleagues, both locally and my 2 colleagues in the Assembly for being here and talking about this. But just to close, I also want to thank the judge in this case, because the judge could have not done ankle monitors. The judge, they could have been long gone, and there are some judges that would have done that. They would have just said, you know, it's a nonviolent offense, not bail eligible, and we're going to let them go. The judge in this case used every sort of aspect of the law to try and maintain some level of justice, of accountability for these individuals. The goal of bail was always to ensure return to court. I'm not an attorney, but I know that. That was the goal of bail. Now we have nothing to ensure return to court. And in fact, I've heard from DAs around the state that there's a large number of cases where defendants don't show up to court. Big surprise. These 2 gentlemen in this case were flight risks, if there ever were flight risks. But again, I wanted to close by talking about this nonviolent offense nonsense. You tell this woman that losing $40,000 is a nonviolent offense. You think she's going to care? $40,000 might be her life savings. $40,000 might be how she pays her medical expenses, her mortgage, her food. But it's nonviolent, so it doesn't matter. We're just going to let them go back out and maybe do it again in some other state, in some other community. Again, our criminal justice laws have become a joke to those who break them. They obviously don't matter to those who are supposed to protect the public, elected officials. My colleagues, we get it, but it isn't just downstate. I wish it was. I wish it was just the downstate Democrats. Unfortunately, we have Democrats right here in Western New York, like Sean Ryan and John Rivera, who voted for these laws, who continue to support these laws. These men are out right now because of people like Sean Ryan and John Rivera and a host of other Democrats from across the state who support these kinds of laws. They don't support the public, certainly from a public safety standpoint, and the people should know that. And I want to thank our members in law enforcement who now have to go back out. They know when they're responding. You think about the taxpayer dollars, the effort that goes into what they do, the dangerousness that goes into what they do, all for this. So these guys can be back on the street a week later or 2 weeks later. It really is disappointing. With that, again, I want to thank my colleagues and certainly take any questions from members of the media.
Well, as you said, bail is meant to get defendants to come back to court. Who's to say, though, that they make bail and go out and reoffend? Would stronger bail laws cut down that?
Yeah. The data shows that. When you have first of all, if you can't make bail, you sit in jail. And when you try to steal some $40,000, I'm okay with that person sitting in jail awaiting their arraignment. And I think most people are okay with that. If you post a bond or post bail, if you don't show up, you lose the bond. And the data would show that when we had something like that, more folks showed up to jail. These folks should have been processed for deportation. Period. End of story. Good news. We got someone who their first act in the United States was breaking our laws. Their second act was trying to steal $40,000 from a U.S. resident. There's just no scenario where these two individuals should not only be free in the United States, they should be locked up awaiting deportation to their country of origin.
Sharon, would you be able to give me just a quick rundown of what happened with this woman as far as just, I don't even big specifics, but just the crime and what happened, just a concise wrap-up.
Yeah, I don't have the details of the incident in front of me. I don't know if you have more actual detail of it. This was handled by the North Tonawanda Police.
So the North Tonawanda Police, again, on the 1st of February, they conducted a sting operation where they arrested these two individuals. This woman had received several phone calls, and that's not new, as I think the sheriff and Mike Norris pointed out. These scams go on, right? They were using spoofing technology. At one point, they actually were able to spoof the North Tonawanda Police Department phone number. They said that she owed money, there would be a warrant out for her arrest, and that if she didn't pay them, then then she would be arrested. At some point during the harassing calls, which she received several, she became suspicious, particularly when it came from an NT Police Department. So she called the NT Police Department, at which point they began working with her to try to apprehend these individuals. These individuals, and I know former Sheriff O'Toole, I'm sure Sheriff Filicetti, and I'm sure the NT Police, they're always thankful for criminal stupidity. These individuals decided to meet up with her to she would pay them in person. So the NT Police, certainly worked with her. So when that meetup was happening, they were there to arrest these individuals on the 1st of February. So I believe the calls went on at least for the month of January, maybe longer, but it was several weeks that she received these phone calls, and it was a sting operation. I commend the NT Police Department. Most of the time with individuals like this doing these scams, you never get them because they're not here, or they certainly aren't brazen enough to actually meet in person with the would-be victim. These individuals did, and that's how they were arrested. And it was only after they were arrested that all these other facts began to unfold.
Did they travel here specifically to meet with them?
I
Were they based in?
I believe they did travel here to meet with this individual to try to get the dollars. So they were residing at some point out in Philadelphia or outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. That was their residence. But again, no legal citizenship in the country illegally, and arrested. I'm not sure exactly what all the different charges they were arrested for, but several charges, all of which did not meet bail eligibility, and apparently being here illegally did not meet the eligibility of being held by ICE. And we were told, my office was told by ICE that this is a result of the policies of the current administration. In other words, they were not making that decision in Batavia. The decision was being made out of Washington, D.C. Thank you.